I am on page 212. We're looking at example 7. Now, up to this point, all of the graphs we've looked at have been linear. They've all been in a straight line. This one is a little bit different. A red golf ball and a blue golf ball were hit at the same time from a platform 48 feet above the ground. The equation and the table describe the motion of each golf ball. Which golf ball reached the ground first? The red golf ball is modeled by the equation y equals negative 16x squared plus 52x plus 48. The blue golf ball is modeled by this table, and this is where I'm actually going to start. Now, if you need to pause the video and copy the problem, take all the time you need, and then restart your video and watch the solution. So looking here at this graph of the blue one, now the graph is not in the textbook. That's something that I've added because I want you to get a good, clear picture of what's happening in this story. So it tells me that the golf balls are hit from a platform. So here's this platform at 48 feet. And the golfers are standing on this platform to hit the golf ball. Now, don't ask me why. That makes no sense to me. That's just what it tells me. That when x is 0, y is 48. So that's the starting point of this process. When time is 1 second, x is 64. So here is the maximum, the highest that ball will be. And then at 2 seconds, the ball has fallen back to its original starting point. So it was 2:48 at this point. Here was 0:48. And then at 3 seconds, the ball is at 0 feet. So my question to you is this. What happened at 3 seconds? And this graph is going to tell us that. If we start to watch the track of this golf ball through these points, you can see why it's not linear. It's not in a straight line. It's going to be hit into the air up to 64 feet, and then gravity starts pulling, and it turns and it makes the descent. And then gravity keeps pulling because an object in motion will stay in motion until it's acted on or it encounters an opposite force. So what was the opposite force? What occurred at 3 seconds? That's where the ball met the ground. It hit the ground. And that opposite force stopped the motion of the ball. So at 3 seconds, the blue golf ball hits the ground and it stops. Okay. So let's look at the red golf ball and see what's happening to it. Excuse me. This is definitely a quadratic equation. It's in quadratic form. Remember that form is ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay. So if this were linear, we could just let y be 0 and then figure out the value of x. Or we could let x be 0 and figure out the y-intercept. But because this is quadratic, we have two values of x. Now, only one of them will be relevant to our story, but we still have to find both of them. Now, you can solve this in a variety of ways. I don't want to get tangled up in the weeds of quadratic equations right now. So I'm going to show you a way to solve this. And since it's quadratic, I know that I can factor it into two binomials. Now, to get a negative 16, I'm going to try a negative 2x and a positive 8x. And that would give me the negative 16x squared. Let me just remind you, using FOIL, why that is true. FOIL, the F stands for first, so you would multiply this term times this term, and that will give you negative 16x squared. And I'm just hoping that that is the right two terms. I believe it is, but I'm going to have to try it to be sure. Okay, to get a positive 48, the first thing that comes to my mind is the 8 times 6 multiplication fact, and it's positive, so we would want both of these to be positive. So let's see if FOIL holds true on this one. So O stands for outside, so you would have negative 2x times positive 6. That is negative 12x. And then the inside terms, you would have positive 8 times 8x, and that's going to be a 64x. And 64 minus 12 is 52. So this is looking good. And then the last terms we know will work, because that's how we got those terms, is by multiplying 8 times 6. So this does indeed fit the pattern that I need it to fit. Now, there are lots of things that we could say about how to do that process. I don't want to get bogged down in that right now. Okay, so the FOIL method, I need to get that out of my way. That checks out. In other words, when I use FOIL, I come back to this equation that we had to start with. So now I can actually find the zeros for this quadratic by taking this equation and this one separately and setting them equal to 0. Because we're trying to find the x values, so we're letting the y be 0. So negative 8 to both sides leaves me with negative 2x equals negative 8. And negative 2, negative 2. So x in this situation is positive 4. So that would represent the 4, 0 intercept. Now, if you're wondering where I'm getting that 0, it's coming from here. That y is 0 when x is 4. Then the same thing over here. Let's move the 6. So I end up with 8x equals negative 6. Divide by 8. And so x is negative 3/4, or negative 0.75. So this point would be negative 3/4 and 0. This point does not make sense to my scenario, because I'm looking at where the ball hits the ground. And time, in this case, cannot be negative. You can't have seconds below 0 in this case. So that's not the point I want. This is the one I want. So it's telling me that when this is true, this ball, the red ball, hits the ground at 4 seconds. So which ball hit the ground first? Was it the red one or the blue one? Well, the blue one hit the ground at 3 seconds. It got there first. So the answer to that question is that the blue golf ball reached the ground first. I would rather deal with the table and the graph any day on this type of problem.